I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excuse me.
We'll now call this meeting to order. The first order of business are public announcements. Details may be found at www.fairfieldme.com. Absentee voting is October 7th through October 31st. The 2020 dog licensing tags will be available at the town office on October 15th. Current 2019 dog licenses expire on December 31st. The annual Household Hazardous Waste Day will take place Saturday, October 26th from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Winslow Public Works Garage. Residents of Fairfield must pre-register at the Fairfield Town Office to participate. National Drug Take-Back Day will take place Saturday, October 26th. Unwanted medication may be dropped off from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Fairfield Police Department. The Lawrence Public Library will be hosting their annual Halloween event on Thursday, October 24th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. The second order of business are public hearings. There are no public hearings scheduled for this evening, so we will move on to the third order of business. Public comments. Members of the public may speak to the council on any item or reserve the right to speak on a specific item that is on the meeting agenda when the item is addressed. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak at this time? Seeing none, we will move on to the fourth order of business, reports from staff and committees. We'll begin with the town manager's report.
So we have received our streetlight buyout documents from CNP. The review process has been completed, and once some minor adjustments have been made to the inventory on CNP's end, they should be signed shortly, which once they're signed, the transition to LED lights can begin. They had some minor updates of last year's piece when we did our own inventory check that just hadn't made it over into the transition, so they're fixing that. Also, the preliminary 2020-21 budget work has started. A timeline calendar is being produced and should be available for the council's next meeting so that folks will know when things are going to happen or when we expect they will happen, so that will be helpful. We received our annual employee count as per PA Hicks Credit Enhancement Agreement. That's the company that moved up off from Escalon Drive. There are 53 employees there. That's 13 new jobs in the area, in addition to the 40 that were saved from leaving the state when the agreement was signed. So that's a great piece, and definitely wanted to make sure you were aware of that. The employment count is required as part of their credit enhancement agreement in order for them to receive their refund. So. And then also on the 15th, the Economic Community Development Committee did have a meeting for, you want to add to that, or were you there, Peter?
That was it.
You were there. So Peter wants to add to that. Basically, biggest part of the meeting was discussing the potential event with Kim Hawks, which she's on your agenda this evening to discuss that as well. So, and that's it for me.
All right. Councilor Lawrence, do you have anything you wish to add about the Economic and Community Development meeting?
No, more to add, no.
All right. Any other committees wish to report at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to the fifth order of business, the consent agenda. These items are considered routine or standard business and therefore will be enacted by one motion. So the items are item 19-102. Ordered the Fairfield Town Council hereby waives the reading of and accepts the minutes for meeting number 2019-18 held on October 9th, 2019, and item 19-103. Ordered the Town Council hereby approves the Treasurer's warrant number 24 in the amount of $1,179,746.38.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the consent agenda. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, excellent. That passes. The next order of business is the sixth order of business, to take action on the following items of business. There are no items under the sixth order of business, so we will move on to the seventh order of business, council workshop and other business. Number one, discuss proposed Fairfield event for 2020 with Kim Hawks. I'll invite Ms. Hawks to come and propose this.
You need to go to the podium, however.
Oh,
Okay.
And sign in, please.
Not signage.
No?
Okay.
No? Oh, okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, I'm hoping to hold an event here in the town of Fairfield coming next October, the first weekend of October. We've checked the calendars not to conflict with fairs or major events in the area. And the purpose of that is to promote Fairfield businesses, to highlight what we do. It's to showcase us years ago, where we came from, where we are today, and where we hope to go in the future. So I would be approaching businesses and seeing what they would like to do as part of the event to highlight their business. I've spoken with Michelle and the Economic Development Committee to just get people's thoughts and what they'd like to see, or any objections, so that hopefully it will be smooth planning. I've spoken with the police chief about blocking off Water Street, the entire area. So there would be blockades between the Big Apple and the post office, and then down at the end, down by the end of Main Street by the light, that would be blocked off, and down at the playground. So this whole area would be segmented off. So which then creates a problem with where do people park. So I've spoken with Hammond Lumber, no commitment, I'm not saying they have, but I've had preliminary discussions with them about possibly using their parking lot with Zimber and all that area. I'd have to approach all three businesses. But that would be proposed, and then the three churches in the area. And we would be hosting this on a Sunday, just because businesses, most of them are not operating, which would alleviate parking issues. So I would be speaking with the area churches that once their church mass is done, that maybe we can use their sites as well. So I'm looking for your approval to put a committee together to create this event, and it would be for all ages. You know, we'd have children's events, we'd have music, we've had pet and zoos, blood drive, you know, just a host of different things here. But it would really be about all of the different businesses to say, what activity would you like to sponsor? So I did just have a couple of discussions with some of the local businesses. One of the businesses would like to sponsor a pumpkin carving contest.
Cool.
Another one, said they'd do anything I wanted them to do. I talked to Meridians, they'll do the beer tent. So everything I've gotten is positive feedback. People seem excited about it. And the people I've talked to, they've talked to other people, and I'm getting calls now saying, geez, I do this, I might want to be part of it. So obviously I've made no commitment to say that this event is going to happen until I get everyone's blessing. I don't want to get ahead of myself. But I've talked to Kim Linloff at the chamber as well, just to get her thoughts. And I did speak with KB Cog, because at the last meeting I spoke with Michelle and we talked about billing and invoicing. And KB Cog would be actually happy to do the invoicing, partner with me. They do mapping, because I'm going to need a map of the area to say where parking is, all the events, because I want it really well laid out so that we get the commitments early, we do the promotion early, and people know where to go, so it doesn't seem like a cluster. And some of the area businesses, we'd have food here, but we would approach, the idea in my head, obviously, I would have a committee and it'd be their thoughts, but right now it's just me trying to figure out what I think would make sense. But it's to give only Fairfield residents and businesses a chance to be part of the event, because it's all about promoting Fairfield and what we have here. I mean, we have the waterfront, we have the trails, we have nice restaurants, and it's just bringing that to, you know, the area's attention. And at the economic meeting, Peter had told me that the bicentennial is coming up and there are grants available, and I'm not saying we're gonna try to get one, but we might. But I enjoy fundraising as well, so I would be looking for the committee to fundraise, and this would be a self-sustaining event. And if there was money left over, if we host it again, then it would go towards the next year. If we didn't host it again, then the committee would decide where that extra money goes to, but it'd be a Fairfield project, perhaps, you know, I don't know, to the playground or the park improvement or something that enhances Fairfield. So I don't really know much more than that, but that's kind of my thoughts.
Have you gotten any feedback from anybody about like paint night at like certain restaurants? Because I know that they do a lot of that in the Waterville area and stuff like that. And there are a lot of artists here in Fairfield, myself included. Courtney does photography
Yeah.
and things like that.
Well, and we would have booths available for people to rent to showcase their personal business. So if you wanted to rent a booth, say for $100, you'd have a table, an 8-foot table. Perhaps I don't have the sponsorship levels because I need to figure out our expenses, what it's going to be cost for security and town cleanup and etc. So once I determine our expenses, I can look at the sponsorship levels. And KB Cog. What I'd be looking for, and I have no commitment from them, but I had an initial discussion with Laura, I believe Laura C. over there. And she said it sounded like a great idea and they'd be willing to help. So I'd be looking for them to put the contracts together for me, get those out to the vendors, do the invoicing, collect the money. They would hopefully do the mapping for me like they had mentioned, and for copies of licenses and insurance for the vendors who are doing catering. So hopefully we'd have everything in order, that we'd have no problem with the event, I hope.
Good.
So based on your description, and obviously it's in preliminary stages, so
Sure.
things could change, but it sounds like this would essentially be a private event that you are looking for public support for. That it's not a town of Fairfield event. You want to form a private committee
Yeah,
and put it on.
exactly. I
Okay.
thought, well, maybe it would rest with the chamber. They've got enough events to handle. Everybody's got their plate full, but I've been a Fairfield resident all my life. I love Fairfield, and it's growing now. I think the timing's good, because years ago, we used to do the Fairfield Days, something like that. And that went by the wayside, and we used to do
The chocolate
a
festival.
chocolate fest, and we used to do a seniors breakfast. And we're not doing events now.
Ran out of
And
volunteers.
I understand that, and I appreciate that, and I'm ready to pick up the ball and run with it. I'm not making a commitment for multiple years, but I think right now, just to do one event and highlight Fairfield, sounds great to me.
So one thing I would point out is in the past we were approached by a different, for lack of a better term, I guess, private committee about hosting an event on public property in Fairfield, and really the sort of primary reason that didn't come to fruition was that committee didn't communicate adequately first with our public safety folks, and then really with the council to resolve issues that did come up in the planning process. And I think that my advice, to the extent that you're ready to receive any advice on this event today, is really, it sounds like one of you a great plan for local businesses and individuals who are interested to come together and plan this, is simply to make sure that you get the keep that line of communication open early and give enough time for the communication for things to be handled as they come up, and not wait until it's a crisis that we can't solve.
In speaking with the chief of police, I asked if he or himself, or he would have somebody from the police department sit on the committee, because communication is vital. And the closer you are to the people who are going to handle those items, the easier. So I'm hoping that the key players, maybe somebody from Public Works, because they're going to be a big part of this, will sit on the committee. I can't make commitments, but even if they just attend 1 or 2 committee meetings, just so that the communication is good, because it's very important, and it saves us all time as part of the committee. And I do have a few people who have committed and said that they'd be happy to serve on the committee.
Like I said, I think the initial hurdle, really, once you have a plan in place, is, quite honestly, once you have a plan in place, if it's not dangerous to the public, I can't foresee any reason that we wouldn't support it, as long as it's financially viable and isn't going to cost the taxpayers. But in the past, getting the viability of the safety aspect of it has been an issue. So that would be my just piece of advice starting out, is, again, keep that conversation, that communication open from the beginning.
Okay.
And so far, Kim has been doing a great job with the communication because initially this meeting was set up because this was prior to the KV-COG discussion, and there was a thought process that maybe the funds may need to funnel through the town. So what we were doing before any planning was even done to go down that road, that's why it was brought here to you in case that was need to be. But it sounds like the KV-COG option is wonderful and probably not anything we're going to need to do. So because that was going to be a piece that we were going to need to definitely work through and set up with the council. So it sounds like it's off to a great start.
And it sounds like Michelle said, like you're off to a good start. You've got all that in place. Quite honestly, beyond just getting our sort of unofficial support at this point, I don't know that there's anything in particular the council has to do for you to pursue this project at this point. You are certainly entitled as a resident to pursue having a lawful public assembly for any purpose, really.
Do you need her to, like, when she sets up a committee time plan to report back to the council?
Well, as long as all of the public safety and permitting and whatnot is going through the ordinary channels, I don't know that it would necessarily have to come back to us. If there are major changes that would involve the encumbrance of public resources, I suppose, then it would need to come back to us.
One of the things that I need to understand is the insurance piece. Obviously, the caterers are going to get their own catering license and pay for that, and they're going to need to add people as the additional assured. I think it's the town of Fairfield. Is that correct, Michelle?
It depends on how it's structured.
Property.
Yeah.
I'm just, I want to make sure that we put the contract together so it protects the town from any liability.
Absolutely.
Well, if a business has a
If they're bonded or something like that.
if they have a booth and stuff like
Yep.
that, their insurance, all they do is just report it, and their insurance will carry over from
Yeah.
a liability standpoint, which
Yeah.
is what we're
It's not
concerned
that
And
about.
he'd know, because he used to sell insurance.
Well, and I think
Yeah.
as long as your committee stays in touch with the relevant professional staff of the town, they'll be able to provide information as to what's needed in those areas. I think as far as the council is concerned, I mean, we haven't taken a vote on it, but I would suspect we're going to give our best wishes to this endeavor. I think at this point, it sounds like this is mostly a sort of executive, a set of executive functions that need to be carried out between your committee and the town's professional staff, the way that an event would. And if there are, sort of other considerations, like you want a proclamation of the event or something like that, we can certainly that's something the council could certainly consider as part of this event as it takes shape and goes forward. Or if you were to run into the situation where something does dramatically change about your plan and it would require public expenditure, then that obviously would require consideration by the council.
See, what I mentioned to Kim at the Economic Community Development meeting is try to tie in with the bicentennial. Because there has events out there and put it on the state website, and if the governor chooses something, then you can come make the Blaine House for the day, if it's part of the bicentennial. Because what she mentioned was, hey, Fairfield heydays, going back for years to now. So.
So it all sounds very good, and I look forward to probably through Michelle and the Economic Community Development Committee hearing more about this as it shapes up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
Unless, does anyone else have any other questions?
Thank you very much, Kim, for coming in.
The next item is to discuss the new and updated mutual aid agreement.
Good evening.
Evening.
I was tasked as part of the mutual aid group that's been meeting for the last couple of years to update our mutual aid agreements. We all basically use the same agreement. There might be some little nuances between communities that would be different. So what I did was come up with one. We first had it approved by the group that's going to use it. The fire chief in Waterville graciously volunteered to have it vetted through the attorney, same attorney that we use, but
Right.
they paid the bill, so it's all legal. But basically, it's under the title, and in the memorandum I sent out, I put the aid to other municipalities under Title 30A. Basically, all this does is you give me permission, or the fire department permission, to go to other towns to help them in emergencies. And hopefully, they sign the same agreement, and they come to us.
Is there a mutual right now, you know, as far as them signing another agreement? I prefer everybody signing at the same time, which would be the best.
No, the existing agreements will always be there, whether they want to sign this or not. They
Okay.
just don't reap the benefits of some of the items in this agreement.
What's your feeling on that level?
As far as,
Well, whether it benefits us or not.
oh yes, it benefits us greatly,
Okay.
greatly.
Because I went over it and it looks good, but
Yeah. What's the local areas, like Waterville, Winslow, Oakland, and
Yeah, did you get a copy of the agreement?
Yes.
we are.
Basically, they're listed at the
Listed.
top.
Yep, okay.
Yeah, I know, it says Benton slash
It's very
Fairfield.
rare, although it does happen. We have been to Vassaboro, which is okay, as long as I okayed that. MMA prefers, their risk management prefers written agreements, so that everybody is on the same page, as far as liability and workers' comp.
Right, right. Makes sense.
So how many towns
That
did you
makes
say
sense.
that were involved in that, chief? In all?
10.
11,
Plus us.
including us.
11 including us.
Yep.
Thank you.
So is this an item that requires action today, or could we put it on as an action item on our next agenda?
No, you could put it off. Like I say, the existing mutual aid agreement will cover us until,
Right.
this is just basically an update of that.
Well, because our policy in general, unless there's an emergency, is not to take action on workshop items
Correct.
on the, their first reading. So if this is not an emergency item, I think there's a consensus at any rate that this is generally favorable, but we wouldn't want to just throw our procedures out the window either.
I'll agree if I don't have to come to the next meeting.
I think it should go on the agenda for action.
Okay, and I guess I'll
Next meeting, maybe?
just ask you,
Yeah, next meeting.
do we foresee this being an item we want to debate, or is this an item that we feel like we
I don't
have
wanna-
enough
I don't
information
wanna
to?
debate.
I went over it. I
I
thought
don't
it
know.
was good.
It's
Okay.
good.
The chief agrees, and he's the guy that's got
Well,
to deal with
he's
it.
the one that's
Certainly.
in charge of
Yeah.
that part of it, so.
Yep.
Next meeting?
Sure.
Okay.
So we'll
Consent
put this on the
agenda for the
consent
next-
agenda. If
Next
anybody
meeting.
has a reason that they want to pull it between now and then, certainly let me know. You'll take it off, but for now, we'll assume that this will be a consent agenda item.
Yeah.
Looks good to me.
All right.
Great.
Great,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Chief.
The next item is to discuss the land use ordinance proposed map revisions.
So,
Several of those, right?
component missing
This is two of
in your
them.
packet.
Yes.
Anyway.
Right.
So the planning board at their meeting last Monday discussed the current village zone. Because it has been brought to our attention that the way the village zone is currently set up out in Fairfield Center was that it bisected the map and lots. So basically, if you lived on 139 and you had a property on 139 in the village zone, only the first 500 feet of your property was in the village zone. And then the back half of your property was considered to be residential. Or I think it's blue, anyway.
Yeah, you're
But the back half of the property's restrictions were more strict than the front. And with land use ordinances, the more strict prevails. So a lot of folks didn't realize that these lots were split in half. And I think a lot of it really just had to do with the way maps were done years ago, and people just simply just did them. So all that this revision would do was simply take all of those lots that were split and make them whole within the village district. And I apologize, because you should have had a memo or an email from the CEO that listed out what those were. So I don't see that that's here. But it's basically 21 different lots that were affected by this. So the planning board did a small public hearing, they notified folks, everybody came. Those that did attend that were residents were not aware and would like their lots to be considered one district. If you pull their tax card, it actually says it's denoted that they're in the village district. Nowhere on their tax card does it denote the fact that it's only the first 500 feet back from the road. So this just really makes things consistent going forward. But however, it does require public hearings and those sorts of things to go along with the land use. It doesn't change the ordinance at all. It's just simply fixing the map for the zone.
This doesn't change any of the taxes.
No, doesn't change any of that. It just corrects the official adopted map.
Yep. Is it the desire of the council that we should begin those public hearings at our next meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, then that's what we will do.
Wonderful.
The next item is discuss the November council meeting schedule. And this is on here, at least largely because I am not available for the council meeting that is scheduled for November 27th. I have some business I have to take care of out of state. And after talking to Michelle about that, just want to make sure that either we want to decide as a council what we want to do about the scheduling. I am perfectly confident in Vice Chairman Boosk's ability to chair the meeting in my absence, but I also want to make sure that there would in fact be a quorum for her to chair if we have a meeting on that date, and make sure that given its proximity to the holiday, there aren't going to be substantial other absences that would embarrass us into having a meeting without a quorum.
Well,
Because it is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, so we just wanted to make sure.
can we do it the week before? If we wanted to? Are you going to be available? The week
I would be
before?
available on the 20th, and I will be at the first
Well, that's not a big deal.
November meeting, assuming that it remains on the second Wednesday of November as planned. My understanding was there were, Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's timing issues with respect to getting a warrant out that would be affected by moving.
That is correct.
Meetings.
So you could do one meeting in November on the 20th,
Yeah.
because you're doing one meeting in December. So that was just one of those pieces where you've got 2 months in a row where you're only doing one meeting.
Which
That would require folks to come in to make sure they could sign warrants, because it's the end of the year. So, and in fact, in December, that's going to happen anyway. We're going to need to call council in to sign warrants. We discussed that when we made that schedule.
And I just wanted to clarify that under our charter, we're actually only obligated to have one business meeting per month, correct?
Correct.
So,
And then the thought process became, so we went through, you could keep your regularly scheduled meeting on the 13th, and then move your 27th meeting to the 20th. However, other than a warrant, and even that's kind of close, it's putting those two meetings close together and whether or not there would be enough business to conduct during that time frame because of the time of year that it is. Your meetings have a tendency, unless there are emergencies for things, are less active during this time frame. And so how you wanted to handle that. So that's why this discussion is here
Fine with
before
me
you.
to have two back-to-back, I mean, if nobody else has any problems with that. Do you?
I don't have any problem with having two back-to-back meetings. I do think that, if we're in a position where there's not really enough substantial business to justify having a second meeting,
Right.
that really becomes a question of, do we want to have a meeting? It's
A meeting for the
essentially
sake of just having a
pro
meeting
forma,
isn't.
Oh,
I guess in the
all right.
interest of elucidating a point with respect to our new charter provisions with respect to council meetings and council member pay, I would point out that if we do not hold a meeting, at least according to my understanding of the charter provisions, that does mean that we don't get paid for that meeting, which
I know
for
that.
me is not,
That is correct.
that's not a big issue for me, because if I was going to miss the 27th, it doesn't make a huge difference to me whether it's one meeting in November or two meetings in November that I don't go to one. But as to the rest of you, that does mean that you will receive a smaller stipend for your service for this quarter. I don't think that should be a motivating factor in deciding how we do town business, but I did want to point it out that if we don't meet, we will in fact not be getting paid for that, which is as it should be. I also don't think that we should have a pro forma meeting solely to get paid either.
Well,
If we
of
can
course
do
not.
that business in one meeting, we should do it in one meeting.
Well, if there's not gonna be enough business to do it for two meetings back-to-back in November, then there's no sense of doing two meetings back-to-back in November.
And then I guess that comes to the question of, personally, I would be fine with having the vice chair the meeting on the 27th if there would be sufficient business to justify having two meetings in November. Otherwise, if it's just a scheduling issue with respect to warrants, I think we could work that out and have a single meeting in November.
I was going to say, we could do the 13th, which is our normal meeting, if there was something that comes up before or at that instance, we can sit down and say, okay, we're going to meet next
Absolutely.
week also
And we could,
with something. So it's not something that has to be planned ahead. We can make a special
right.
adjustment.
And I can certainly exercise the power to call a meeting if there's a need to do so. And
Right.
Well,
if I'm not here, then it'll be chaired by the vice chair. If I am here, then I will obviously chair that meeting at that
Yeah.
time.
well, I'm confused now. Are we doing one, or are we doing two, or what we?
Well, we'll do one.
it
My
gonna be the
suggestion is we
20th?
do the one on the 13th. And then if we do need
Well,
a second meeting, then we can set it up. We can specify a specific date at that point in time and set it up.
so it's not gonna be the 20th, it's gonna be the 13th. Is that what we're saying?
That seems to be where this is going.
Well,
As
I need to know
scheduling
so that I can
is
be
a-
here.
Scheduling is entirely a privilege of the council. We can vote on this tonight once we have a proposal. So at this point, it sounds like the proposal.
I will make a motion that we hold one meeting in November on the 13th, and at that point in time, if needed, we can reset and set a second meeting.
All right, that is the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
It's a motion and a second, and I will state the motion as a motion that our November schedule will be for a meeting to be held on Wednesday, November 13th, and that meeting will include a workshop item, if necessary, to discuss further scheduling. Is
Correct.
that an acceptable statement of that motion?
Yes.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on that point? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, so that will be the schedule
Okay.
going forward for November. We will presumptively have one meeting in November unless we take up that issue again at our November meeting.
And we
And that-
should know by then.
And we'll know by then what we're looking at for further work. And that does not in any way affect our schedule for December, which has always been to have one meeting on the third Wednesday of December to avoid the conflict of the holiday.
Right.
All right, so at this point, just so that everyone is completely on the same page and the public is aware, that means that there are now presumably only going to be 2 more council meetings for this
For the
term.
year. Yep.
Okay. All right. With that, we will move on to discuss other council business. Mr. Lawrence, do you have anything?
All I want to say is just be careful next week, since it's Halloween. Make sure you wear something fluorescent and have a flashlight. Also, too, it's been raining and the leaves are out. Just careful of being slippery and things like that. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Pashadi?
Yes, I have a couple of different things. The first, and it was going back to our first order of business, just for an explanation, I think, to our citizens, is a Household Hazardous Waste Day. And it might not be a bad idea to explain what the household hazardous waste means to the citizens.
Do you want to explain it?
Sure. No, do I want to explain
Yeah.
it? No. I'll let the town manager explain it. That's her job.
All right.
So, household hazardous waste has to do with the disposal of chemicals that may be within your household. Most importantly, and what is most common, is paint, stain. Could be that you had to clean out a relative's basement and you found unknown, unmarked, rusted cans.
Linseed oil.
Things that you don't really know what they are. Usually it's, you find out as best you possibly can, but oftentimes usually they're old paints, old stains. I heard someone the other day said he had more than 30 cans of paint in his basement that he had never thrown away. So
Yeah, that
that's typically
sounds
what it
logical.
is. Sometimes it is batteries. It could be pool chemicals. People
Yeah.
who no longer have their pools. Things that they normally will not take in your regular daily
Bleach.
household waste
Bleach,
disposal.
aerosol, and
Linseed
Out of
oil.
curiosity, does this include like e-waste products, like air conditioners and
It
televisions?
does.
and
It
that?
will take some of them, not all of them.
Okay.
They're on the list. I think they'll still take TVs, stereos,
computer.
and I think the computer pieces, but those also, that ability to dispose of those at e-waste is available to Fairfield residents year-round.
Yes.
So you can do that. They're located off Industrial Road in
Right.
Waterville, going out towards the Elks
Yeah,
Club.
they take
They always
a lot
have
of
those.
computer stuff and
And
things
the
like
other
that.
things too, we tell folks, if you have paint in your house, oftentimes what people don't realize is if you can take the cover off, mix some kitty litter in it, and let it dry up, say you miss this event. If you do that, then you can dispose of paint like you normally would anything as long as it is completely dry.
Does that include, say you have really old, say, lead-based paint, or is that only for
Not
windows?
lead-based paint, no.
Okay.
Those sorts of things would definitely have to
There's-
go forward for proper disposal.
Okay.
Because I've attended this event before, I'm going this Saturday. The town office does have a list
Bless you.
of what they take. You have to register and they give you a time. Because when I went Monday, they have plenty slots open.
Yep.
So,
And the pamphlet is available on the town's website. It's also been posted on the town's Facebook page. And we have pamphlets available right at the town office. And anybody, if you call during normal business hours, can help folks know exactly what it is included and what isn't. So
Excellent.
that's a good
Okay,
piece.
That's why I just wanted that to get out so the citizens
Yes.
can understand what we're talking about. And the
Very
second thing I have is that last week, for the town of Fairfield, I was up at the courthouse in Skowhegan, and accepted the Silver Distinction for the Main Spirit of America Award for the town of Fairfield. Now, I'm going to report this is really an honor in that. However, there is a mistake here. And unfortunately, we can't correct it, but next year, it was a communications problem that we've had for a while. We actually qualified for the gold award, but because of a communication situation, we got the silver award. And that just means that we appoint people, we recognize volunteers and things like that. But-
So the requirement is that Spirit of America asks that you recognize your award recipients at your annual town meeting, which we did.
Which we do,
recognized Kim
yes.
Lindloff this year. And so when you do that, then you would be eligible for gold. Well, there's a box that's not checked next to the town of Fairfield's name that says that we don't do that. And we don't have the ability of correcting that. So the folks at Spirit America are supposed to fix that, and that should be corrected going
Still
forward.
quite an honor anyway.
It
But
is still a
anyway, this
lovely
is an
honor.
honor. It'll be put up
And
at the
thank
town.
you very
It'll be
much.
put up at the town office, so.
Yes.
That's
They
great.
accepted it for us
Great.
last week.
Good.
Thank you. All right. Anything further?
No, that's it.
All right. Councilwoman Chandler?
Nothing for me tonight.
Councilwoman Booth?
I have a couple of things. Just as I wanted to reiterate what Peter had said, of course, Halloween is coming up, and if you got black cats, keep them in. I have a black cat, and I don't let my cats out because sometimes bad things happen, and there's people around that do bad things. I'm not saying that people in Fairfield do things like that, but I'm just saying if, keep your cats in. And if you take your children from door to door, you want to be checking everybody's candy, and I don't think anybody in Fairfield would do that. But again, that's why they have Halloween parties at different places to keep your children safe, and I guess that's about it. Thank you.
So I just want to remind people again to come out and vote in our municipal elections. This is our last opportunity to talk about that before the election happens, and it's very, very important. There are 2 open seats on this council in this election, so that is do the math, that's 40% of your local government that you will be deciding who's going to be sitting in those seats. And there are no incumbents, so it's a chance for you to let your voices be heard, and it's going to be a new direction no matter who comes in. So I think it's very important that people participate in the election if they want to have a meaningful say in how things go for the town of Fairfield. And I just want to encourage everybody to go out and do that. It's not a big election year. There aren't, there's not a presidential election or representatives or governor or anything like that. So but it's still very important. And I would encourage everybody who has ever said, how do I affect what happens in this town? That's how you do it.
That's correct. It's called get out and vote.
Yes, and I just want to encourage people that there are no unimportant elections, so treat this one the way you would the big ones. And I hope that people will come to the Halloween event at the library tomorrow. It's usually a fun time, and I'll probably be there for a little bit at any rate. I'd like to go to that event, so I'm hoping that people will show up and support the library and support their public events.
Correct.
All right, and with that, if there are there's no other council business, the next regular meeting of the Fairfield Town Council will be on Wednesday, November 13th, 2019. At this time, the council will recess and sign all documents that require the signature of council members. Is there a motion for
So moved.
recess?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. If there is no objection, we are in recess.